Welcome to Gran Turismo 4, a game that probably needs no introduction. Then again, maybe you've never heard of it. Perhaps you've been living under a rock. In which case, 1, that's weird, man. Get a house. And 2, Gran Turismo is built up of many events, all with specific criteria for entry. So to complete everything, you're gonna need a lot of cars. Fortunately, they can be acquired in one of 2 ways. A, you can buy them from a new or used car dealership. Or B, by completing championships, you can win specific vehicles to help you on your journey. However, today we're doing a randomizer run, and that works a little differently. Sure, we're still going to need all the cars to complete events, but in this playthrough, we can't buy them. We can only win them as rewards. And all of the rewards have been completely randomized. So for an easy event, we could walk away with a fully tuned race car. Or, on the other side of the scale, we could do a 24-hour endurance race and walk away with a Fiat 500. So with that brief introduction, it's time to roll the dice and get going. Obviously, the first thing we're going to need is a car. And since we can't buy one, the most obvious way to get our hands on one is to complete the B license, where we can be rewarded with up to 3 cars, depending on our performance. And that performance turns out to be but it was good enough for us to get our hands on at least 2 cars. The first, a front-wheel drive Honda from the 70s. I can use this. And second, the Suzuki Escudo. Yes, selling this is going to give me so much money to do up that Honda. And do up that Honda is exactly what happens, because we want this car to carry us through as many events as possible. And we start that progression at everybody's favourite beginner event, the Sunday Cup. Now, having dropped 100k into this Civic, it's probably to nobody's surprise that our first foray into Gran Turismo ends up with us completely obliterating the competition, taking the lead and claiming victory in our first championship. And sure, we'll take the monetary reward, but what we're really looking for is the prize car. Oh, an Aston Martin. Now that's not a bad car to end up with after an amateur Sunday outing. But for now, let's keep this momentum going, little Honda, and we'll head on down to the front-wheel drive cup to see if you're still competitive at this level. In case you're not aware, the Honda City and I share a very strong bond, so it really pains me to admit that this might just be the most fun front-wheel drive car I've ever been in, as it easily mops up the front-wheel drive challenge as well, awarding us a brand new car, in the shape of a slightly newer Honda. But we don't have time to pay attention to it, for now, because we're stepping up the difficulty once again, taking our 1970s Honda over to the Clubman Cup. Sitting on the line, we notice that the race is 96 points in difficulty. Also, seeing an S2000, RX-7 and a GT4 parked up next to us does very little in the way of instilling confidence. Once the race is underway, our confidence drops another notch, as our poor launch allows every other car to open up a gap between us. But all is not as it seems, because once corners enter the equation, we quickly make up that time, and it's not long before we're chalking off opponents as we move our way up through the grid. In fact, we're making our way into second before we even hit the second lap. This plucky little Honda has a ton of hidden potential, and he's using it to set his sights on first place, which by the end of the second lap, he's in sight of, hitting the nitrous and stealing that position away, finishing a lap later with a comfortable win, earning us yet another Honda, but it's mid-engine, so we have a use for it. Next up, we take our little Honda and head up the Japanese 70s Cup. And while this series of races may have been boring, the reward certainly wasn't, as we gain ourselves access to a Skyline. Now I hear these things are amazing, so we don't need to tune it, right? Confirmed, this thing requires no tuning, as only a few seconds into the 4-wheel drive cup race, it's taken first. And throughout the rest of the race, that lead does nothing but increase, as it claims victory, giving us access to an RX-7, which at some point I'm sure we're going to find an excuse to use. But for now, the stock Skyline saga continues, as we're heading over to the Turbo Cup. Ooh, 195 point race. It looks like you're not completely overpowered after all, Skyline. This race could actually be a fun challenge. Although, you do seem to be doing a good job of holding your own on the start straight. And as soon as the first corner comes around, you dive bomb your way into second, leaving just one opponent to go. Maybe I jumped the gun a bit, thinking this would challenge you, as we've already caught up to first place and are now looking for a gap. You know, there's no other cars around. We could give him a little nudge, sending him into a wall and giving us the position. No, that's not very sporting. We'll wait. And our non-murderous decision is rewarded by a gap opening up on the inside, right before the final straight. So with that, first place is ours. But that is when we notice this car's main weakness: top end speed, as that Mitsubishi is much faster and very eager to take his position back. Checking the rearview mirror, we notice that's not the Mitsubishi back there anymore. It's been replaced by a very peppy little Peugeot, and that thing is closing quick. We hit the final straight before the end of the race, with it right on our tail, failing to realise that he needs to go around me, and that is the only reason that we walked away with a victory today. Well, that was a bit too close for comfort. I think we should upgrade the car, so we'll get 2 stages of weight reduction. Yes, 3 stages of weight reduction. We'll also add a new muffler on to give us a bit more power, and since we're on a tight budget, we're going to add a computer chip for $1,500. After that, well, we're not spending any money on a turbo, but we can at least upgrade the intercooler. And hopefully, this makes the races a little easier. Oh no! We've done too many upgrades. And because of that, the races have become trivial. Ah well. At least at the end of it, we get our hands on a Mitsubishi 3000 GT. But for now, it's time to switch over to the NSX, give it a bunch of upgrades, and complete that MR Cup, so we can get our hands on a top grade race car. We'll keep that in the garage. It's gonna come in handy when we need some extra cash. Sticking with the NSX a little longer, we head on over to the naturally aspirated Cup, where honestly, there is no competition to be found, and we easily claim victory, getting our hands on a classic Skyline. I am going to do anything I can to find an excuse to drive this car. Heading back to the beginner leagues, we decide to take that RX-7 and win the FR Cup. And in doing so, we get our hands on a... No. You get out of my garage. Sell. Well, waste of a prize car, but at least we got some cash. And that Skyline can burn in hell, where it belongs. While we got the RX-7 out, we'll go ahead and win a Mazda special event, rewarding us with an RUF. Now this is fantastic. It's going to carry us through the convertible and the Boxer Cups, which are 2 of the more rare vehicles we needed to find. The only vehicles of high rarity are the K-cars and the elusive sports trucks, which will honestly be our most likely point of failure. Okay, with what little money we've actually got available, let's selectively choose some upgrades to make this car just a little bit more competitive. And once that's done, let's go and take care of those 2 events. First up, the Roadster Cup, which to no surprise, poses very little in the way of a challenge. So let's step it up a notch by heading over to the Boxer Cup. Of course, being the truly remarkable vehicle that this is, it easily wipes the floor with the opponent's hair as well. And in return, we are rewarded with a very large Jaguar and an even larger Audi. Maybe taking care of an Aston Martin special event will actually get us something useful. Ooh, now this is an interesting car. But before we have any events we can use it in, we need to unlock a new license. So we're back to take care of our A license. You see, Skyline, this is why no one likes you. With the A license complete, we are rewarded with 2 further cars, a Suzuki, which I think we can actually use in an event, and a Toyota, which I'm also sure will have some purpose. With the new license unlocked, we have also gained access to all the easy versions of the special events. And in the background, we've been building a car to tackle these events, reintroducing our little Civic from earlier. Now let's show everybody just what you're capable of. The Civic puts up an incredibly strong first showing, making short work of every opponent it comes across. On tarmac. Once we hit dirt, it went south real quick. It turns out, after all the money I put into the Civic, it's kind of a dud. And I'm gonna need myself somewhat of a more proper rally car. So, let's see if we've won anything useful from these rallies. Not this one. Not this one. Nope. I've already got this car. No. No. Ooh. Here we go. No. And no. Okay. Clearly, that four-wheel drive is gonna be the best option for us. Look out, everybody. Boat coming through. After cleaning up the final rally stages, we get our hands on an old WRX, an old MX-5, and an old Skyline. With the special stages completed, we're back to tarmac, and it is now time for our Civic to redeem itself. And what a difference traction makes, as it easily makes short work of the Civic special event, which rewards us with a Honda Beat. That's our K car, checked off the list. Sure, sadly, it's not a Suzuki Cappuccino. But in a randomizer run, we can't be picky, so we'll take it. The Civic is adamant that it is capable of more, and desperate to prove itself, it wants to be able to enter the Tuning Car Cup. Against my better judgment, I agree. So here it is, Civic, your one chance for redemption. It takes half a lap for the Civic to even take its first position. And it's not till another half a lap after that it's got its second. But with a higher top end speed, the Civic makes some impressive gains on the start straight. Even if it does end up bouncing off the limiter, that's still not enough to stop it from taking third place. And by the end of the second lap, our little Civic is making moves on first place, taking the lead before the start of the third lap. The Civic, desperate to prove itself, has pushed so hard to get to the front. But in doing so, it has forgotten about tyre preservation. They're just toast. And it doesn't take long for our opponents to begin plotting their moves. First up, it's the RUF, with the S2000 making his move shortly after. Civic, you were so close to redemption. Somehow, the Civic manages to dig deep and completes his redemption arc by winning the championship and giving us the reward of the little Suzuki we all dream about. Sure, it's not in Cappuccino Grey, but that doesn't mean, with enough upgrades, we can't make a knockoff version that'll do the trick. Sorry Honda Beat, you're gonna spend the rest of your life in our garage. Because there's no way I'm picking you over a Cappuccino. Which we instantly put to work, cleaning up any championship that it's capable of, eventually making its way up to the Japan 90s Championship. Okay Cappuccino, this right here is probably the hardest event we're going to tackle with you. So let's hope you've got the power. And within a few seconds of the race beginning, it's already weaving its way through cars, making its way up to a podium spot. Of course, our Cappuccino is not content with third place. I may have drastically overestimated the difficulty of this race. Having built such a substantial lead by the end of the first lap, I couldn't imagine anything causing us a problem now. Well, that was certainly unexpected. But with a full 2 laps remaining, we're not exactly worried. In fact, we've retaken first place halfway through the final lap. Unfortunately, we don't build the lead we would have liked to by the final straight, and are forced to resort to our nitrous, barely holding on to the lead as we cross the line in first place. Come on, sports truck. Ah, garbage. Still not a sports truck, but we can use the MX-5. And I guess we can do some European events. And okay, also some American ones. Really need that truck though. Your time has come, race car. Prepare to be turned into credits, which we are going to use to upgrade other cars, such as our old Mitsubishi Lancer, which we are about to use right now in the Japan Championship. First thing to point out about this car, it's amazing. Sure, it may not be the most powerful thing on the grid, but it's light and nimble, and it's fast enough, so it makes short work of cutting its way through the grid. And before you know it, it's chasing down the NSX in first place. And after a little bit of fighting with it, the Lancer makes its move, taking the lead and building up a substantial buffer, in case for some reason I make a horrific mistake. I know. With such a long stretched out first gear, this thing is painfully slow to get going. And once we're finally on the move, we find we've got a lot of ground to cover. By now, we're 4.5 seconds behind that NSX, with just over a lap to go. So we're going to really have to push this Lancer if we have any hope of remotely catching up. Halfway through the final lap, and we're 2.5 seconds down, and we are just starting to see that red NSX off in the distance. As we continue to push, we finally close the distance, right as we come up to the final corner of the lap. Our tyres are getting worn, and our nitrous is running low. Hopefully we've got enough left to carry us through to the finish line, as we just overtake the NSX and claim victory. Now, after that stressful race, Gran Turismo, surely you agree that we deserve our sports truck. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Ah, crap at a crap cracker. That is not a sports truck. Luckily, we also completed the 80s Cup with this car, and that reward is just as bad. Honestly, I've got this feeling that if I'm ever going to find a sports truck, it is going to be located in the American events. Now this championship here was an absolute nightmare. Sure, this Corvette gets off to an amazing start, and one by one it manages to pick off opponents as it moves its way through the grid. The issue with this car isn't that it's not capable, it's more that it has issues with longevity, as these tyres do not last 5 laps, and we can't afford to pit. At one point, I literally gave in and tuned up a 1,000 horsepower Dodge Viper, but I couldn't let this go. I came back to the Corvette, turning on a bit of traction control and hoping that protects its tyres from me long enough to finish these 5 laps. Changing to a harder compounded tyre is just not an option, as it already takes us up to the 4th lap before we've got eyes on first place. And this is where the main battle commences, as old Corvette and new Corvette go head to head, weaving their way through the corners in a quest to see who will come out on top. As we come up to the final corner of the lap, new Corvette gets a bit of an advantage, as in this car, we do not have enough confidence to push through this final corner at speed. We sacrifice a bit more of our tyres, pushing to regain our ground on that Corvette. And with the tyre meter hitting orange, we've finally closed the distance. And now, we're just trying to stay close enough until that straight comes around. And with better acceleration and top speed, that's going to be our best opportunity to take the lead. Having not only taken the lead, but also gaining a bit of distance between us and first, our tyres are completely shot. And all we're trying to do now is hold on to the finish. We decide we've got enough of a lead to take the final corner slow and safe. That almost ends up being a mistake, as our opponent rapidly closes the distance, finishing the race just a 1/4 of a second behind us. And here we go, sports truck. Well, at least we can convert that into credits. I mean, I guess it'll handle like a truck. And yet again, no sports truck. If it wasn't hiding in the American events, perhaps we can find one in the European. No, and a third K car. Right, at this point, I think it's time to return to the licenses, to get our International B. As not only will that unlock new events for us to compete in, but we'll also get some reward cars. So let's see what we get. A Mercedes, maybe useful, and a Chaser, but having done the Japanese events, not much use. We're going to tune this WRX up, turning it into a proper rally car, so it can carry us through the special events. You know what I want, Gran Turismo. I'm getting desperate. And we unlock a ton of cars for completing all the normal difficulty events, along with hitting 25% completion. But unfortunately, as always, no sports trucks. And we're forced to return to the license centre. This time going after the International A, where I come across my old nemesis, the pace car. And seriously, no words can describe just how much I hate this thing. But despite its best efforts, we managed to complete the International A license, gaining us 2 non-truck looking vehicles, forcing us to return to those hard difficulty special events. Come on, Gran Turismo, I'm begging you, a sports truck, please. I don't want this. Eventually we concede and use that truck, completing the remaining events and unlocking the Gran Turismo World Series. So we'll just hop into one of our race cars. Oh yeah, we sold them. Great job on that decision past me. Oh well, if Mr. X-Bus can win this in a second-hand RX-7, then surely that 1000 horsepower Dodge Viper that we tuned earlier should be able to do the job. Here we go, Dodge Viper. The final championship. All our hopes for success are resting on your shoulders. Out of the gate, it sets off with a blistering pace, moving its way past the first of the opponents. And although it takes a bit of a shunt into the first corner, it just uses that extra momentum to take yet another position. By the end of the first lap, we're challenging first, using the long straight to cement that new lead. For a few laps, everything looked to be going great. Our lead was increasing. But then, our opponents started rapidly gaining on us. Our tyres were showing their first signs of wear. And pushing hard, trying to retain that lead, I make a disastrous mistake, bouncing off 2 walls and costing us 2 positions. I tried to hold on to second place, but sadly, our tyres were having none of it. There just wasn't anything I could do to remain competitive. Our only option was to visit the pits at the end of lap 5. It's here that I realised we're probably not going to win this race. We'd be lucky to even get a podium spot, as we're falling further and further behind. By the time we get out of the pits, we're already back in last place. We make quick work of retaking 5th place. And then a single lap later, we're taking 4th. This fresh set of tyres has really made a world of difference. We are back to being competitive. Beginning of the 9th lap, we take yet another position as our opponents are in the pits. rewarding us back a podium spot. But our situation continues to improve. As the beginning of the final lap, we overtake second place, who's also in the pits. That leaves one opponent to go, and we furiously push our way through the lap, trying to make up that lost ground. But unfortunately, it just wasn't doable, and we finished the race just a small distance behind the lead car. While this wasn't the victory we were hoping for, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And with the realization that from this race on, we could just qualify to start in first place, the event honestly became trivial, and we did a clean sweep of the rest of the races, completing the Gran Turismo World Championship, and being rewarded with a Honda Integra. Fantastic. Thanks so much for sticking around to watch the video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like or consider subscribing. If you're interested in another video, there's one here. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Bye.